Well, in which line? If in the whole budget, if you say how many employees are in the city of Stuart, there's roughly 300,
we're looking at the
then it
building
is.
department because there's this excess. Oh,
But by the way, that
Slash
wasn't, so let me, the utilities department has utility fees that are a specific amount that are budgeted that are utilities. So in the garbage collection department, those employees are paid with garbage collection fees as
Okay.
well. And so if you don't collect garbage, there isn't any money to pay them. In the water reclamation department, those employees are paid with sewer fees, and so if they don't collect them, they don't get paid. In the
okay, so
water
they're
treatment
not,
department,
they're not in the general line of employee payments and benefits.
well, police and fire wipe out the general line of employee payments and benefits. All of the employees are in the general line, and it shows the total for the employees, but each sub-department or enterprise fund
Shows where the
has
income is coming.
the funding for those,
Okay.
right?
I just wanted thank you.
Commissioner Giovanni, hold on, Commissioner Giovanni, I just want to make sure I understood your question. So the employees of the building department, if you look at general fund, and there's a budget report in the budget every year that has, here's the total salaries of general fund, here's the total overtime of general fund, here's the FICA of general fund. Those building employees are in that line, but
They are in that line, okay.
but there is a revenue equal to that expense in the revenue part of the budget. Okay? And so if that expense for that building department goes down, then that revenue goes down. If that expense for that department goes up, then that revenue goes up until the reserve is gone at such point. And then at that point, if we decided to keep the department and we didn't issue another permit to the manager's scenario a moment ago, well, then ad valorem would
Right.
kick up the cost of those employees if you
If it
wanted to
existed.
continue to employ them. Right.
But clearly with a shortfall like that, at some point, we're going to start asking questions.
Right.
Right now, I couldn't do
it. Yeah, ad valorem supported that function previously. Now we've been fortunate enough that the reserve has been, large enough to keep funding that permanent reserve. Now, if this was 2 years down the road, and as all these scenarios were thrown out there today, if 2 years down the road we haven't issued any permits, and you say, hey, there's $1.4 million here, well, general fund's picking up that tab, not the reserve, because the reserve would be gone.
And I just want to say, everybody in the building department, this is not a conversation.
Yes, this is just
terminating the
this is
building
just a
department.
little.
These are hypothetical discussions for a workshop.
And also,
Yeah, he's like, I'm out.
to the commissioners,
Well, the
the
shortfall is not hypothetical.
the shortfall.
The shortfall in ad valorem isn't hypothetical either.
Well, no, the shortfall in permit
Reserve
revenues
has been drawn down.
is not a fake number, and we will dip into that reserve this year. I just don't know how much yet until 9/30, September 30th. Also, for the commissioners, that statute said you couldn't use this money to offset taxes, or like you couldn't buy down your millage or your taxes with the permit reserve. It could only be spent on permits. Okay?
Commissioner Clark, the question.
Yes.
Hi, Jolie. I guess Jolie's in the beginning of his presentation. It's an hour. So this is all about funding sources. And even though the building department is supposedly a example or just a discussion, I think people want to know where those puts and takes came from and how many employees would be affected by $1 million plus shortfall, and what would happen. I think people want to see today what you're working with.
So currently, you're looking at a reduction already of probably 8 full-time employees, and then the 4B that was on the first page could be a number between 0 and 8 more, if that's what you're referring to. But I don't know what that number is yet. And so, for example, and this is, again, the guy that drives the garbage truck that I'm referring to right now is not getting fired, so please don't think you are. But in the event that the guy that drives the garbage truck was terminated during this budget process, we'd have to turn around and hire another person to drive a garbage truck because you can't not pick up the garbage. So as we're going through this process, to remove positions from the city of Stuart, I can't remove positions that I know the day afterwards I'm going to get a request to rehire that position to replace that person, because two things happen.
Of course.
Yeah, historically, when they did a early retirement back when Dave Ross was the city manager, he offered this thing to do a budget reduction and offered a bunch of people early retirement, and a bunch of people accepted it, and it ended up costing the city $600,000, because when we went to rehire all those positions that the people that had been working in left, it turned out that the market, actually, those positions were being paid more than the people were actually earning that left. So it cost more to put new people in the positions. Obviously, we're not suggesting that proposal here, but.
So
it
why are we
makes-
bringing that up?
Well, I suggest it because I'm not getting rid of people that are going to cost us more to replace
Correct.
the next day. There'd be
That
no
makes
benefit to that.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. What we're trying to do is find positions that would not be replaced, that would never come back, that won't exist any longer. And whatever department that's in, it just simply is going to reduce the number of people doing whatever that service is.
Commissioner Clark, your petition question?
I think
Oh, you might have a follow-up. Yeah, no.
No, so, and that's looking at the potential for the 4.75 millage rate, or just, or keeping it at the 5. If we keep it at the 5, we're not as behind. So, I mean, our discussion here is to find out if we do bring it down. We know that if we bring it down, we're gonna hurt people. The issue is how much in the aggregate is best for the city at large, or the budget, when things are aggregated for the budget versus what it impacts an individual property taxpayer, whether it's at the residential, we probably don't see that much, but it's a commercial that we'll see. And I think that we'll listen to Jolie, but I think we need to decide if you're gonna keep shaving this budget based on, are we gonna do it at the 4.75? Are we gonna keep 5?
Mr. Vice Mayor?
I believe that Commissioner Reed was next.
Yeah.
No, the
Yeah.
Vice Mayor.
Oh, sorry, I
That's
didn't
okay.
see your card up.
So I think it's easy to get lost in why this is relevant, talking about bringing the millage down. Really, it's not the place of us to get into the weeds too much. With regard to particular expenses, that's what we've hired Mike to do. The one lever that we have to pull to direct staff is millage. That's
Yeah.
really our only lever. We can discuss different, but it's not appropriate for us to say we should hire more people or fire people in any
Yeah.
particular department. But if we look at the overall environment economically, we're in a bit of a perfect storm. One, we have the COVID years now over. There was a lot of government spending, a lot of money coming our way. To Mike's point about ARPA money, there was just a lot of money and growth in government. That era is over. And at some point, you have to start having those difficult discussions about how do you start to consolidate so that the government can continue to function and perform the level of service people want. But on top of that, you also have Blaise Ignolia. I don't know if you guys follow the new state CFO that Ron appointed recently. This guy is going around talking about doing audits with everybody. I've listened to some of, because I'm trying to get a sense of what's the state's take on what municipalities are doing. And Blaise is talking about, in the next election cycle, them pushing that constitutional amendment to do away with property taxes. that may or may not happen, but I think we should be, as a board, thinking about what does that look like? It's not just, signaling from Ron DeSantis. It's happening. I'm seeing consistent and now actionable direction along that. The city of Stuart and Martin County would be particularly hit hard by that because we don't have the population to really get a lot of money out of sales tax, assuming that is where that money comes from. I think that we should be looking at how do we start to refine what we're doing in terms of personnel, so that we're not hit so hard that we either have to raise taxes, right? So if something like that happened in the 26 cycle, you have basically 2 years to figure out how you're spending money in your government, and that's it. Once the property taxes are removed, you've got a 2-year period to figure that out. And my concern would be you lose your fire department. My concern would be that the city dramatically has to cut, where if we can start a trend, and I know it's painful to talk about, it makes everybody nervous and uncomfortable, who might get fired or whatever, but if we start pulling back on that millage now, I think it creates a trajectory where you're refining, and if that property tax thing doesn't happen and it's just talking point, fantastic. We can start to push back and go in that other direction, but the last thing I'll couple on top of that was to your point about the increases in property taxes coming in. We've been seeing previously double-digit increases. And to your point, we saw in this last round a single-digit increase. I believe it went down to 7.
Yeah.
This is another compounding factor that you need to look at. With an increase in our property taxes, we are still short $3.9 million. The trajectory of that has gone from double-digit increases now to single. That's starting to shave off. As a business owner, when you're seeing your revenue decreasing, you need to couple that with a decrease in spending, or you're about to be in a serious problem. Now, it may just so happen that Trump does magic with tariffs, or I don't know, some jujitsu happens in the market, and all of a sudden you're back to double-digit increases. And again, now you can start talking about, I made the point last time, and I wasn't trying to be hard on you guys. You can talk about captains or these things, you got there's more money coming in, we're on a rise. But all of these factors right now, if you keep your millage at 5, if you don't cut your spending, I think you're looking at really, if any one of them is to hit, you could have issues, let alone all of this together. So I don't appreciate the talking point about residential versus commercial, and the average homeowner will only see 50 cents of decrease in their property taxes, and Walmart will get off the hook. I don't think it matters really when we're talking about decreasing spending. Really, I'm small government, I'm conservative, when you're talking about taxes, it doesn't matter who benefits from a tax decrease. We should, if we're seeing increases in property taxes, we should want to see residents and business owners receiving some portion of that net. It shouldn't just be how much more money we have to spend in government as well. So those are my general thoughts. I hope that by the time this is over, you guys can make it work at that 0.25 decrease because of those reasons.
Commissioner Reed.
Yeah, Jolie, my question for you was, and this should go to all you guys, I would request it from Jolie. I was sent the entire budget broken down. It helps you a lot to look through it, by the way, instead of just looking at this stuff, because that scratches the surface. Jolie, do you know what we spent last year in overtime for employees at the city, by chance?
I could find
Because
out.
everyone keeps talking about letting employees go and firing them, but I didn't know if it was easy for you to find.
I mean, I didn't have that report open, but I will open it right now.
Okay.
To that point, Commissioner, it's always a fine dance between us of when is it cheaper to pay existing people overtime versus did you generate enough to actually just say it's cheaper to get another person and add the fringe benefits and everything on it.
We also need to break that down into.
Correct, by each
department.
department, because like,
I think police is going to be close to $300,000 in overtime.
Right.
Fire is at $525,000 in overtime. And then when you get into the utilities, I think there's one utility that has about $100,000 in overtime, and then the others are 25,000, something like that. They're nominal. And then you get into like the clerk doesn't have any, the CRA doesn't have any, the development department has less than $10,000.
well, I was curious, because like I see it budgeted at $1 million, and like, for example, maybe some of this stuff can be projected depending on the department. Maybe holiday weekends, you might know, you can send employees home earlier. Hurricane season, as far as garbage. I don't know, I'm just thinking outside the box. I mean, you guys are talking about laying off employees, but maybe looking at the overtime budget, if it's over $1 million a year, I don't know any business owner that runs their business like that.
Well, those departments would tell you that we need more employees.
So would it offset the cost then to lower I mean, which direction do you go?
Right, that's the question.
That's just,
At 9/30/2024, general fund had a year-to-date expense of $1,031,000 in overtime. That doesn't include the fringe benefits calculated on it, FICA tax and FRS.
And half of that is police and fire.
No, probably.
Police and fire are 76% of general fund's budget expense.
And so one of the problems that you have trying to do it is that, and I'm not trying to throw fire under the bus by having the conversation, it's just an easier example to use, is that the fire department has minimum staffing standards. And so they have to have certain guys in certain positions, and if somebody's not there, somebody else has to come in and fill in for them. But every single firefighter that works for the city is already scheduled for 2,496 hours a year based upon the way it works, and a regular schedule is 2,080 hours a year, but the 2,496 goes into those 48-hour shift or 48-hour per week shifts or 24-hour shifts. So as a result, anytime a firefighter has workers' comp, anytime a firefighter takes PTO, anytime a firefighter goes out on FMLA or is sick or anything, it's overtime. We don't have backup full-time employees waiting around to see if somebody's going to be sick or whatever it's going to be. Every single time somebody's out, the minimum staffing requires someone else to come in, and unfortunately this year there was an anomaly of circumstances where there was a work comp issues or there was
Military leave.
I'm sorry,
Military
leave, right? We have somebody out on military leave right now, but when someone goes on military leave, you have to keep their position, and it's 9 weeks of overtime every single time just because that's how it plays out. And I'm not saying it's anybody's fault, it's just that's the nature of the beast.
yeah, and I wasn't targeting any specific department, it's just, I don't know.
But it's, and I agree with
Yeah.
you that it's, and for what it's worth, during the budget conversations, Jolie was the only one that sat through all of them with me, but I had some serious conversations about exactly what you're talking about, and there are some positions that you could schedule. I'm going to use the Christmas parade, for example. I know right now that every single police officer in our police department is going to have to work on the first Friday in December, because that's what happens on the first Friday of every December. So you could, if the chief wanted, he could have nobody patrol the streets on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
That's just
And then,
unrealistic
but it's,
comparison, Mike.
and again, and I'm not saying zero, but yeah, I don't want to say the numbers that are patrolling, but you
Yeah.
could take them off, because I know they're going to be there. I know it's overtime. I know the 4th of July is going to be overtime as well. So the key to that is, okay, well, schedule less leading up to it. And in the utilities, for example, talking with Peter about that, when we have a pipe break, and if a pipe breaks on Monday, it's all hands on deck. So then the guys work, and they might work till midnight, Monday and Tuesday night. Well, going into this next year, if they have 40 hours in, and they're done on Wednesday with 40 hours, Peter's not going to have them come back to work for the rest of the week. They're just going to stop when that pipe's fixed on Tuesday night and not work Thursday and Friday, and whatever they were going to be working on, they'll pick up next week when they get back, so that, because they're already at 40 hours, so those Thursday and Friday would be at time and a half, whereas if they just wait till the next week and do it less than that, the only problem is that's about $40,000 is what that looks like it'll save, so it's not huge numbers. The police and fire is a harder beast to tackle it because of the way that the scheduling goes. And so we are taking that overtime into consideration, though, and I agree with your observation that
It's high.
it's a huge number, and
Yeah.
and it, you know, it's kind of misleading, because if you don't include it, it's, you know, what people are being paid and what they're earning is off by $1 million.
You have any other questions?
I think overtime's super high, personally, in my opinion. I know there was discussion too, Mike, I don't know if it's ever been mentioned to you as well. The MSTU, I guess, with the contract with Sewell's Point being low, I don't know,
It's a contract for 10
It's a
years. It can't
contract,
be
so it's-
adjusted till 28.
28. What would it be if it was the same as Martin County MSTU rate, like if we matched it?
I have no idea. I haven't, well, first of all, if the Martin County's rate is 2.67 right now, so if you
Bit
took
higher,
the
yeah.
valuation of $950 million, which is what Sewell's Point's most recent valuation is, so 950 times, I'm sorry, 950
Basically,
times .00267 equals, it'd be $2,536,500.
I was just going to say, it's definitely over 2 million that they would pay if they were participating in Martin County's MSTU.
It's-
Their fire bill would be over 2 million.
It's, yeah, 2,536 based upon their current assessment. However, I don't know what exemptions they
Yeah.
have and what, you know, different homestead stuff. Now, for what it's worth, you have to remember that when it was entered in essentially 2017, the valuations were considerably different and the rates were different. But even then, the number could have been higher. You have to be careful with that, though, because we've
Balance.
now, when we did it, the city adopted that program because it had the capacity to provide the service without having to hire additional people. But we've now become, you know, that's part of our budget. And I think it's about 900,000 now that they're paying, I don't think it's 800,
This year's, according to the contract, we're at 7.
okay, so
It
700,000.
went from 3, there was a jump from 3 to 5, and now a jump again from 5 to 7. We've had 2 very aggressive jumps.
And I had put together 2 proposals that I thought were a different way to equitably determine it back then, but it was chosen to be at 5 and we're at 7. Well, if we said to Sewell's Point it's going to be 2.5 million, Sewell's Point might say, okay, well, we're just going to go with the county. And then we would have a $700,000 hole in the fire department because we wouldn't be able.
still a third less.
But, I mean,
Yeah.
without a doubt that the number should be readdressed, but when the commission entered into that contract, it was a 10-year service or agreement with Sewell's Point so that equipment could be purchased and things like that. And the way it was negotiated by the city manager at the time was the way it reads. And so if we were to cancel it, we, under the agreement, have to pay the difference between what they pay us right now and what they would have to pay Martin County. So we would have to pay Sewell's Point.
That wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, so we
obviously.
can't do that. Now, I have had conversations both with our chief as well as with the Sewell's Point city manager, probably, you know, not having them in public comments here as to what the amounts are, but
Yeah.
as to incentives to enter into an agreement early. So if we were to try to work out a deal with Sewell's Point to enter into an agreement early that would be in 26 or even 27, we'd have to give them enough of an incentive to agree to pay significantly more than they're paying now, but significantly less than the 2.5, that would make them want to agree to do a new deal early. And obviously, it would have to be enough to make the city of Stuart interested enough to make it go up. The problem is that when we look at the Sewell's Point contract, we look at it as a service and a readiness and we provide you with this fire service not for the calls you actually receive, but for the ability for us to respond to a call in the event you need it. Because last month, they had 30 calls. So if it's 30 calls times 12 months, if it's a total of 360 calls and you're charging 2.5 million, they would say, well, wait a second, you're charging us, $100,000 a call or whatever it is. But it's not that.
Yeah.
It's not the number of calls. It's the readiness. It's the
Being available.
security that we're there in the event the call needs to happen. So the way we look at it and discuss it is everybody, if you're in Sewell's Point, you take the approach that
Yeah.
it should be like a la carte. We'll only pay when we call. And of course, we can't provide a service like that because it would be impossible for us to do
Mr. Manager, an analogy
Yeah.
that we've used internally is it's like your water service. If we made water on demand only, you'd turn on your faucet and then wait 20 minutes for the water to get there because they knew that you were asking for it. Versus the readiness is the water's always there at the tap.
Right.
You turn on the faucet, the water's there. That's our base fee, and that's our readiness charge. After that, we charge you for consumption, how many gallons you use. So the fact that they don't have to, only bill me if I use it, well, then we can't be on standby constantly to
Right, to be there.
send in the truck when they ask for it, so. Are there any other questions? I was going to,
I,
Commissioner Giovi?
Commissioner.
well, now my questions are more because kind of everybody's gone around. First, I want to say that I agree the overtime sounds really high. But the reality is if we had to hire more people with insurance, benefits, salary, all of that would be probably more than that if we were trying to fill those positions, to have them ready, available, rather
We-
than pulling for overtime.
We increased the fire department's budget by $1.1 million in hiring last year. And we still ended over $500,000 in overtime.
Right. And you would probably have more if you did not hire
Right,
those individuals.
exactly. It would be
Right.
significantly higher, and that's what we did. We hired 3 what I call floaters last year, and the floaters were, we have A, B, and C shift, so we hired positions that could go to station 1, 2, or 3 on A, B, and C shift. So if someone's out at station 2, one of the floaters can work that station 2 position to avoid the overtime or wherever it needs to be. Unfortunately, with FMLA, work comp, and PTO, and military leave, and other issues, there were more people out than we had to replace them with.
But that's not your normal ongoing. I mean, that just happened to be
It's just one of those years.
firestorm in
Right.
1 year. The second is that at some point, maybe you and I can talk, because there maybe are other ways we can increase revenue. I'm not going to go through them now and get nitpicking into them. The other thing is, I just wanted to comment on Commissioner Clark. Almost made it appear that if we stayed at 5, there would be no loss of positions, and I'm assuming most of those would be attrition, where you're not filling a position where someone leaves or they're retiring. So it isn't just at 4.75. It is, even if we left it at 5, there would be reductions. And then going to the point of the vice mayor, we need to slowly pull back on that throttle. Otherwise, we're going to be in a situation in a year or two where we have to hit the brakes at the stop, and we're going to be maybe having to really slash. I mean, it's much better to do it on a slower base going forward and control it, which is what we can do now, rather than have to react to it when all of a sudden we're hit with, catastrophes in whatever way, shape, or form, property tax all of a sudden being pulled, all of the things that bring us revenue now. So if we want to, let's control it with our ability to do it now, do it slowly, because, again, with slow growth, it's do it slowly, do it smartly. Don't wait till it's smacking us in the face and then we all have to, kind of fire, for lack of a better analogy, you're at a fire and now you have to hit all forces going forward. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
I'd like to hear on the revenue. Just curious.
Well, yeah, that's
She's talking to
that's where we left off.
She's talking to Commissioner Joey.
Oh,
Just because
okay.
it gets us all thinking, I guess.
Right, I mean,
know.
and excuse my ignorance, because I don't know, you say that we give annually money to the CRA, is that a mandatory amount we have to give
Yes.
each year?
Otherwise,
Okay,
you're
so
giving
it's-
it back to the county, correct?
Well,
Okay,
so,
I
right,
didn't
so
know how
we-
that actually worked, all right.
The same amount that the county has to pay us from their ad valorem,
Okay.
we have to pay the CRA from our ad valorem.
All right. And I know this is just always a hot topic, it's that impact fees, and lots of counties are doing them, they're increasing them. Number one, I have an issue with impact fees, they come in at a certain rate, and the project doesn't get done till 3 years later, when those impact fees are really more. So maybe a way that we charge those impact fees so that they cover the actual cost of improvement for infrastructure when that project is done might be a better way to handle it, rather than taking in the money and then waiting till the project starts and we really are already short in doing the infrastructure around that project. So that was one other thing. And the last one I mentioned was, I'm sure you're not just looking at positions to slash, it's those, I'm assuming a lot of them would be people who are leaving or retiring and you're just not filling that position. I mean, I don't know, I'm asking the question, is that how you're dealing with some of the reduction in?
All of the reductions that would be based by attrition or filling like that have already happened. So any additional would not be attrition.
Okay, so that they would actually.
I've had two since the first budget workshop that ended up having separation from the city, that upon separation I terminated that position just because it was fluid. So those two are already gone. And then there's about 6 more that there were 9 positions that were open that I froze to hiring. 6 of those have been completely eliminated, and now there's I think 3 positions still open that would potentially be open to hiring. And then there's also some other positions that, again, for example, I'm using a truck driver. We do have positions, or I think it was a diesel mechanic, for example. A diesel mechanic left, that position came open, but we have to replace the diesel mechanic, so I authorized Milton to hire that person, and a new person is coming into that position because it's just simply, not one that was plausible for us to get rid of.
And to the manager's point, when he authorized that rehire commissioner, I then funded that position back. So that position is funded because we are in fact going to fill it, and I presume that person will be working here next year. So that was
So
a
that's in the
cut that had to go back.
And again, not looking at different departments, but I know nothing about trucks, diesels, or whatever. But are some of these positions something that it might be more beneficial for us to contract out? I don't know how often a diesel person is needed, but maybe it is something in the long
So
run.
that-
You're not paying benefits, you're not paying insurance, you're not paying a salary, you're just contracting out to an individual or a company that would come in and do that need for that period of time.
We spend a little over $500,000 a year right now contracting out for services of those nature. And Jolie and I actually talked about an hour and a half this morning about some other potential positions. But like you said, there's a fine line there.
Yes.
You get rid of that employee and then you end up contracting out, and it turns out costing more, and you end up
Well, but
getting
that's the
yourself in a
analysis
pinch.
that gets
Right.
done prior to that.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, we're
Saying,
we
yeah.
feel like we're pretty close to that now.
I'm sorry, Mayor, before you answer Commissioner Reed's question, Commissioner Giove, yeah, we don't budget impact fees, so that's not something we budget, so we don't say, oh, we expect to collect impact fees this year, but if I have an applicable project, which should be, by the definition of the impact fees, be an expansion in service. So if they were going to build a 4th fire station, you'd be like, yeah, we're expanding service, I can use impact fees that we collected to fund that project. But I can't use impact fees to fund the salaries or anything. So if
No, I
yes,
understand,
ma'am.
maybe
So-
the salaries, but
well,
I'm talking about the
yeah,
infrastructure around that project.
to your point, if I had the project, I'd love it. If this expense was projects, I'd be like, oh, well, let me pull in impact fees and fund it. I do agree with you that it's grossly underfunded because
Yeah,
it's like Social Security, right? They collect the money when you're 20, and then, 70 years later, they want to pay you the money they collected that rate when you're 20. So it's like, yeah, the impact fee should be 20 years from now what it's going to cost to replace it, not what it was today.
We also, you can't use impact fees for replacement or maintenance. You have
gotta
to
be
use
new.
to increase capacity. So if we took a road impact fee, we can't pay it just to repave the road. We actually have to build new road miles. So a few years ago, we had an impact fee study done, and we had to reduce our road impact fees because we don't have any roads planned to be built. So there was no road miles. Now, a turning lane can increase capacity, or widening of a road can increase capacity, but
A traffic light, we've paid for traffic lights.
And many of
increase
those have
capacity.
been discussed with the
So we
whole
have those, but-
development. We've had
right.
to increase roads, do turn lanes, put in extra lights.
Right.
So, again, I don't think the impact fees we
The-
charge covered enough of that.
Well,
And
the
so
problem
that's
is,
coming
it's
in.
also, if you
The
look
state
back at
limits,
it, you can only charge
Right.
what the impact is by that developer. A significant amount of our traffic comes from our neighbors to the north and south, and they don't build in Stuart. And so if somebody built a building in Jensen Beach and they drive into Stuart every day, those impact fees stay in Jensen Beach.
Yes, no. Well, the part of Jensen Beach that doesn't.
Right.
And that's a calculation that's described by the state.
Right.
So we don't have the ability to just, okay, we're going to help.
Well, actually, several commissioners across the state of Florida have increased their impact.
So,
You can according to formula.
but like Manatee County, they're in the process now of, that's part of their SB 180 challenge.
Yes.
So we'd have to pile that into that. Is
Okay.
there doubling theirs?
Commissioner Reed?
Yeah, I think it's a double from
Yeah,
13 to 33.
I just wanted to state, like, this is a prime example, growth doesn't pay for itself.
No.
I can tell you that.
Amen.
You know, we look at our ad valorem taxes, and this isn't a jab at fire rescue or police, but it eats up our entire ad valorem. So the property values definitely aren't there to even sustain what we have in the city. As far as millage decreases, I mean, like Mike said, it does go more towards commercial. I know on the residential side, for what I pay in property taxes, I do not utilize those services in the city. So I'm one of those people that contribute to the next household that's going to pick up that phone and call 911 or whatever services they have. I don't have children that are in public schools, but I believe in the next generation, so I am contributing. But how do you get other people to pay their fair share? Because everybody wants, but nobody wants to pay it out of their own pocket. Instead, they want it coming out of someone else's pocket. I don't think we should target events that we have in the city and stuff like that, because that's actually a revenue generator when we have Rock and River Walk, any kind of music and movement.
Parades that generates income.
Yeah, like that stuff I wouldn't go after. It's more so like, I mean, yeah, the overtime, it is annoying, but the ad valorem, the property values themselves basically do not sustain the growth that we even have in our own city. So what do you do long
Well,
term?
when you say the growth we have in our city actually went down 690 people. Our population was reduced for the first time.
So, and then I know you mentioned, Mike, something with commercial multifamily, they equate to the lowest 2,000 residences. How many multifamily units were they? I don't,
Oh, so if we say, it's hard to, I don't know how many units it is, but for example, the
just
top
to do apples to
10
apples,
the top 10 taxpayers in Stuart
were multifamily.
are Indigo and whatever it is north of the bridge, and so they generate over or right at $2 million of the $18 million, just those 10 in taxes. And the bottom
2,000 households or
don't
personal
generate
IDs.
$2 million.
I was just
They
curious
don't,
for
but
Mike.
those apartments eat up most of the service.
Why?
If
Well, I don't know
you have a
that.
standalone home with a family versus an apartment with 200 people, they're going to use services more than that.
What we've found is that the assisted living facilities and the 55 and older are the highest service users, and that's just by the very nature of the thing. We found that Access and Indigo have no more calls than any other neighborhood.
Is there
And-
newer,
And it's just the people living there might be
Just different
30.
demographics.
And so they just don't have the calls that you would have. Walmart has a lot of calls. They're not significant, but it's petty theft and stuff like that. But
Just a constant, yeah.
built a substation at the store for the police to use. But just by its very nature, also, I think the firefighters that are here probably tell you they go to Walmart and stuff like that often as well, just because people have issues when they're, wherever you have a large group of people, you have issues. But do you have that chart, Julie? I don't know if you can access it. I don't know if it matters or not. But he has a chart that has the
Well,
things on it.
like I said, there was a time crunch. I had
Right.
to come up with what was the most economical,
Right.
but
And it also, we also can't and don't
Can't target.
determine who uses the most services, like, does the person in this single-family home over in my neighborhood use more services than I do, so they should pay higher taxes than I do, and you just can't go down that path.
Oh, no, that wasn't even
because
the
it-
reason
right,
for my
it's
statement.
like,
No.
well, Commissioner
It
Giovi
is on the whole to service the whole community.
Commissioner Giovi, to tie it back to your earlier impact fee discussion, when you're calculating to the formula the mayor was talking about, transportation impact fees are usually calculated based on what's called trip generation. And they say, well, a CPA office isn't going to generate many trips. So if you're building a CPA office, it's a very low impact fee. But they'll say, like, a bar is going to generate a lot of trips. Well, assisted living facilities are one of the highest trip generators, so they pay a larger transportation impact fee when they're going to build that. So they look at the statistics and the science, they say, how often is EMS being called there? How often is public safety being called there? How often is whatever happening there, accidents? And so you can look at those trip generations and basically tie that into what you're saying is a demand for service, because they're saying this is how many cars are going to go in and out. Right, a car dealership has a large number of trip generations because people jump from car dealership to car dealership shopping for cars in one day. That's why the transportation impact fee is so high on a car dealership versus like a consignment shop is nothing, right? You're going to pull up, park, shop for an hour, and then leave, and that's one trip versus the others. So this chart that I pulled up, I know.
Reed, are you done with your question?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Oh, okay. Boss, the manager had asked me to break this out in a particular way. I did not have time today to break it out that way. But there's a direct correlation here. So this graph looks very similar to the graph I usually show each year in the breakdown of the properties. And what this is to the manager's point, he was saying that there were 10. There's actually 71 parcels currently in the database at the property appraiser tagged as multifamily units greater than 10. Now, that greater than 10 could be 11 or it could be 300, whatever the units are. And so this graph usually shows you how much we're collecting in taxes from these groups. This today, and I haven't had time to label it correctly, but this is where the quarter mil, this is their portion of the quarter mil. So, and I know Commissioner Collins, you said it doesn't really matter where it goes, if it's residential or commercial, but passing on that quarter mil savings, this is how that quarter mil savings gets distributed to those property types. So, and this is residential only. And so these, down here on this end, are those included in this, are those 71 multifamily units?
So that the blue line where his.
The blue line is the number of parcels of that type, okay?
Right.
And then the green is how much of the quarter mil savings goes to that group, okay? And I broke it down a little more. I know that we've mentioned these people a couple times. And this is a standard display that we do every year based on what the average bill would be. And so in picking, this is what the effect of, this is the taxable value of those multifamily units. And this,
Here's my problem.
yes, sir.
We're in a budget meeting, right? Why are we not looking at what was spent last year and where? versus what is proposed for this year, and even maybe previous data, why are we looking at multifamily as being the generator of income? Why are we putting so much energy into this?
We're not actually, we didn't pick multifamily. What we did is looked at the revenues to decide where the money's coming from, and it turns out, if you go back to the graph, that
That's not what the
multifamily was
purpose of the
just,
budget
that's
meeting
who it
is.
was
The
at the
budget
revenue
meeting
side.
is figuring out our budget, not trying to figure out and double down on this talking point of
And it's-
this argument of
It's this
residential homes versus multifamily. What's our budget?
The conversation is not new this year. The purpose behind it is also because the residents get the services. They're the ones that actually want the boardwalk. They're the ones that want the parks, want the garbage pickup, want the services. They're the ones that really make up the community. The corporations don't use the
But that is not the
boardwalk.
purpose
Right.
of our budget meeting.
The budget meeting is to balance what the residents
budget.
want.
Our budget.
Right.
Right. So why are we putting so much energy into this narrative of multifamily and commercial getting an out of a 2.25 decrease versus homeowners? It just feels like we're really beating this.
Because
Really
as
going
the
into this
services
talking
get
point.
reduced, the amount that the homeowners are affected matters so that they can decide whether they're getting a good value for what the payment
But
they're
that's-
making is.
But our job is to figure out the budget, not that.
Well, Commissioner Collins, I'm sorry, you're looking right at me, so I'll talk directly to you.
Sure.
I provide this schedule every year with every budget workshop. We say what if it was still 5, I'd still have a display of what the average taxpayer of various rates. I've included it every year. You can look with the city clerk through the public records. Every year we include what an average taxpayer's bill would look like. I put a few different numbers of someone with a $100,000 value house, someone with a $200,000 house, someone with a 50, somebody with nothing. We show that every year. This was actually looking at the savings and where it's going. If we're reducing a millage, I'm certainly going to produce, this is what the new tax bill would look like for those taxpayer types. This is all numbers to me. I don't have a narrative, Commissioner. This is simply something I include every year with, this is what your average tax bill would look like. This is what the tax impact of the taxpayer would be. If I had it 5, I'd put up the slide and say, here's the 5. In fact, on the slide, I do still show what 5 mills would be on these people if that's the adopted millage. Here's what the 475 mills would be on these people and what their proposed tax bill would be.
But in a-
include that every year.
But in a business for a budget, right? Where are we deficient? Where can we cut? From a budgetary standpoint, reviewing your income, your
Well,
revenue.
my first thing is we
It is
cut
what it
back
is. What's the budget? What do we need to cut so that we can,
because I cut $913,000 worth
you get
of
my point,
every
instead of
one.
reviewing the revenue and where more or less of it's coming from, what in the budget needs to get cut?
Expenditure fund.
Well, and
Well,
that
where
obviously
we-
starts with revenue.
Where we left off is I was on this slide. That was where the $913,950 goes.
Vice Mayor has already said, it's not up to us to direct.
Yeah.
It's not us to get,
And then,
we just said that earlier.
But this presentation is supposed to be
It's a
about that.
comprehensive presentation of the budget and the effects of the decision we make. We're not concentrating on this more than any other element.
The decision we make will be relevant to the millage that we set, correct? That's the decision we're going to make. That has to do with the money we're spending, not the revenue coming in. The revenue coming in is what it is. The decisions that we're going to make around where we set our millage has to do with how we're spending money. Having
That
a
is a budget.
presentation
That
today
is a budget.
Well,
Yeah.
on where it's coming in.
The budget is income.
The revenue is,
Expenditure.
we're presenting to you as the staff of, here's the current revenue at 5 mills, and here is what it looks like. If you're reducing it to 4.75 mills, here's what that looks like, and here's who saves from that, and here's what those savings are for a house at 50,000, a house at 200,000, a house at 500,000, and a house at 10 million, to show what the revenue and what the payment the houses are going to be making pay to generate that revenue. Once you finish that and determine the revenue, or for that matter, the ad valorem on the revenue, then we go to the expenditure side, and you're right. You say to me, we're going to make the ad valorem 2 mills, and we have to go out and remove whatever that amount is. I agree.
I'm just, my point is with like, what, 30 minutes left or whatever it is.
You want him to
Commissioner,
stop the budget
I left off at zoning fees, and I just said, I don't know what utility tax propane did, but it's really kicking it this year. And we went far afoul from there. So I was in the middle of going through revenues and saying, for you to say, how am I going to balance this budget? Well, the first thing I'm showing you is how I didn't just pad the budget, and I was explaining what each of my revenue choices are and why we're upping those. I could come in here and just plug $3 million and we're like, done, right? But that wouldn't hold muster. It would be a hole in the budget. So I was trying to explain to you, and I think it did generate conversation, like, why'd you do this? Where does that come from? So I was going at revenues first and saying, these are the revenues that have changed since we last met.
Just for me, like, I would want to see what the budget was last year, what is proposed this year, what the difference is, and what that single-digit increase looks like across the different departments, and then we make it 0.25 less versus 5. What the who's generating, what, you know, who saves if it's 5 versus point, from
Yes, sir.
balancing a budget standpoint.
Okay, I would still have to produce this schedule for the budget anyway. In the first workshop, the budget sneak peek, you did see that, and general fund budget went up 1%. It went up $358,000, and there were many departments who had reduced their budget, cut their budget, everything. And I've said this to the departments at the staff meeting. In a normal year, I'd be like, great job, everyone. It would still be hard to find the money, because I said at the beginning of today's workshop, the difference is we've moved from capital expenditures that I could fund with impact fees, to Commissioner Giobbe's point, to more operating and personnel, which I can't fund with impact fees.
Correct.
So the first thing is I got to find money to fund some of these issues, right? If these programs are going to be kept, the programs that are being kept still have to be funded. On our very first slide we started with, even at 5 mils, I'm still $1 million out.
But that kind of information feels more relevant for us to make the decision we're going to make.
Yes, sir. And my point, I'm still going to produce a chart of what the average taxpayer impact is going to be. The fact that you didn't want to see it today, and I apologize that you didn't want to see
It's
it.
not that I don't want to see
I'm still
it,
going
it's
to make
just
it.
not as valuable
Okay.
relative to these other.
So, just because, if you go on our website, which you upgraded, that information is available, right? You can highlight each year, you can
Well,
highlight
yeah,
each category.
On our website, what's
Yeah.
available under what's called the transparency portal
Right.
is a real-time number of our current budget year-to-date expenses and all of our prior year year-to-date
right.
expenses.
All there.
At least to 2022.
Yeah.
Now, we have more historical data available. What's not on our budget right now, or on our website right now, is this budget, because it is not your tentative budget. It's not an adopted budget. It's still a working product. Some other governments have already posted what they call their tentative budget, but they haven't adopted one until that first hearing in September pro trim. So what I was telling Commissioner Reed before the meeting started, after you adopt the tentative millage and the tentative budget on September 8th, the next morning on September 9th, that tentative budget with that millage will be available. And then for that 2 weeks between, you'll wait, and then on September 22nd, you'll adopt the final millage and the final budget. And then that budget will be available on the website as well. Now, is it the final document that I submit to see if we're going to win the budget award? Maybe not, but it would be the document with the numbers and the guts in it, okay? So that's where you get the by the line item account. So overtime, here's overtime, this, that, however much you want to see in it. You know, the bean counter gods don't require us to put 7 columns in there, but if my commissioners want 7 columns in there, I'll put 7 columns in there. Today, what I was trying to show you is between the $3.9 million I left you at and today, how we got to $1,093,000 or whatever it is at 5 mils, and how we got to $2,023,000 at 4.75 mils.
That was very valuable.
Okay, so I have manipulated some revenues since we last talked, and I was trying to explain my rationale between doing those revenues. And then we got way off topic. So yes, the presentation has taken way longer than it was supposed to. But, you know, so there I was just leaving off that I felt comfortable upping, I wouldn't feel comfortable, Commissioner, just going in and plugging a number. like, hey, we want to do 4.75 mils, we're out of budget by 2 million. I could go down to the bottom line and say, I'm going to make 2 million in widgets, thanks, done, budget's balanced, have a nice day. For me, it is all just numbers, and they're very precise numbers down to the dental plan on an employee so there's I'm going to get very particular with you right here.
Well, that's what I'm looking for.
You wanted the environmental attorney, well, some stuff I can't present here in public, but you wanted the environmental attorney's budget to be $300,000. Because of a change in the dental plan, it's now $299,843.
Maybe not that level of.
Right, but to me that is, I have to do that too. So I'm going to go back and adjust the budget to make that budget $300,000, where we have to do that to make that happen, okay? So that's exactly what happened. A dental plan for that employee, and there's only one employee in that department, that dental plan changed, which changed my budget number, and it flows all the way through the entire budget. So for me, you're definitely talking about you want the 5,000 level high fly over the airport. I'm trying to give you 5,000 without getting caught down on the runway where I am.
And we
say,
appreciate that. We
But
really
less,
do.
less
Okay.
around revenue, yeah, more around.
Okay, I mean, that's, I wanted to give some shout outs, like to the fire department, their ambulance fees are up because
There you go.
they've done some software and, they've done some process change, where that is, okay, we'll talk about that.
But just, Mr. Mortel, we don't have a hard stop.
You guys are the board, we have another meeting, but it can start whenever this one's finished. I mean, the advertising is, that
I
it'll
understand.
start here,
Right.
but it doesn't have to start at 4. It's just that we'll pick it up whenever we start. I think that the tape recording might
Do
have
we
some.
have to make any decisions this evening with regard to the budget?
You don't have to vote on anything to adopt the budget, but as much direction as you can give me, like, if you said, we do not want to provide garbage service anymore, that would be very clear direction. Obviously, you're not going to say that, but any direction you give, and I'm using it as an example because I don't want to, get people worked up over stuff.
Garbage will still
But
continue to be
But
collected.
it's clear, I mean, I'm clearly
Well, you
hearing,
directed at the last meeting to not touch fire, police,
and utilities.
and
Right.
utility.
Correct. And
So that's pretty specific.
But you also directed to reduce the ad valorem by 0.25, which is 100% fire and police.
Yes.
So
I
it
understand.
has a effect because you have to then go to other sources to fill that hat.
I believe I also heard, Mr. Matt, I mean, you don't want as many reductions in service as possible. Sorry, I split the monitors so I could see you. I need a phone book over here so I
Kind of
can.
ominous from my angle.
Sure. So in the attempt with the manager, that's what our game is he says, like, to garbage, for his example. Say, well, what if we cut garbage? I'm like, that's not going to help you, that's in the sanitation fund. Oh, what if we cut the tram service? Like, that's not going to help you, the CRA pays for that.
Yeah, just general fund.
And so each one of these proposals and possibilities is where we run down to what is the actual effect on. So by you cutting the millage 0.25 mils, if that's what you do, it did reduce ad valorem 913,000, but it gave us back 152 from the CRA. So the net effect was 760 something thousand.
Right.
That is what so anyway, and every mill or every quarter mill, that's what that would be. Every millage would be 3,008,000, 3,005,000. So that's what we're doing is we're running through these scenarios, and believe me, there's some crazy scenarios on my little notebook. And all we're doing is waiting to plug them into that 4B to do it. So what I'm looking for is you to give the manager direction if we're in the right direction, if we're going whatever.
That's,
and then
I'll
to
give
go
you my
forward
quick,
with
I'll give you my
more
quick,
steps.
is that's the direction. I appreciate where you've gone so far with 4A. I want you to exercise 4B with 0.25 as the target and get as close as you can to that, if not at that, as possible, is my direction. For all the reasons I mentioned earlier.
One commission.
Yeah, that's my direction.
Commissioner Kyobi?
I just have a few minor questions when I was going through. By the way, thank you for sending me the budget so that I could look at it. I I noticed, and these are small amounts compared to what it is we need, but every little amount helps. The 2026 budget still shows 25K going to the Martin County Business Development Board, which we had already reduced it out of the 2025. So I guess my question was, why was it now in the 2026?
That was the initial, so that's what came in from like last year's budget, and it was put together when it's submitted by everybody. It was submitted, I don't think it's still.
No,
in
it's
there
not there now.
Yeah, it's gone now.
So
Oh, okay, because when I looked at it on the line, it was in the 2026
Yeah.
budget, yeah.
And it was, so that was the initial, what you got was a snapshot in time in March
Oh,
of
okay.
this year, and that was the initial budget numbers that Jolie and I started working with to make those adjustments, but that 25,000 has been removed.
in a large number,
And
Commissioner
that's
Giovi,
1.5 million of reduction.
Okay,
the
my other question,
itemizations that you're looking at, what we tried to provide you, those itemizations were when we were out by 3.9 million. So already there's $1.5 million of that is gone and has been cut and altered. And so
oh,
you got the detail
yeah, I got the detail.
of how
line by
it
line.
came to
Okay.
3.9 million.
Because if there's something in there that we haven't addressed, I want to be able to address it.
Right, if you look, we'll just give you a checklist, like done, oh, wait a minute, we haven't done that one,
And then
Well, I
the
certainly
page-
hope, I'm just sorry, but I hope we wouldn't vote before we hear from the public. Positive comment.
Well,
We're not
right now,
voting.
I'm kind of in
Right.
the middle of my questions.
Yeah,
Okay.
just-
Okay.
There's
Okay,
no-
and there seem to be two line wages, they may just be, but they were both under stormwater, one non-departmental and one under stormwater maintenance. Are they two separate departments, or?
Yes, ma'am, per
Okay.
bean counting, standards, we keep and it's called stormwater non-departmental. So those are expenditures that have nothing to do with the people in stormwater. It's simply things that fund must book. Each one of the funds has one of those. General fund has a non-departmental, water sewer has a non-departmental, sanitation has one. The only one that doesn't have a specific one is CRA,
Okay.
because they don't have to play with anyone else.
When I was going through line by line, there was no definition for the $1 million under the city mayor functions. I mean, were we attending that many functions?
1,000.
That was 1,000, Commissioner.
Oh, it looked like a million. I was like, are we attending that many
No, but we
functions?
could, that'd be quite, that was easy to cut.
But we did
I thought maybe we were running off to the islands or something.
We cut the $1,000.
Yes, it is gone. That's $1,000 for mayor
But that's already gone
functions.
anyway.
Okay, all right. So I just looked at this last week, so there have been a lot of changes already since I've looked at it. And I think that was it. And, yeah, I'm not in HR, I'm not looking to tell anyone, but I helped my boss run a small business, and whenever health plans and whatnot got out of hand, because they do go up and they get crazy, have we shopped for newer health plans or better priced health plans? I don't know, I'm just
Yeah.
asking. We have,
Yeah.
okay.
We're,
Yeah, health plans are tough.
we're in a kind of a self-insured program, and then we have Cigna act as our health plan administrator. So-
I don't utilize any of the benefits, I didn't need them, so I didn't take them.
Right.
Well, Commissioner Giovi, unfortunately, this has been a bad experience here for us. So this would be like you having a very serious accident that you're to blame for, and then shopping for car insurance, right? Your quote would be
I
really
see.
bad if you tried to
So
switch.
We
Employees
need,
who were-
we
okay.
need 3 years of clean.
We need 3 years of really good experience before we're good
Yeah,
for
that
coverage.
happens.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm very happy about the $1 million under the city mayor functions. Thank you very much.
Flew you on a private jet to dinner.
Yeah, right. All right, that was really my questions, and I didn't, realize, and I should have realized you'd be changing those numbers up until the day we were meeting today.
Does the board wish to hear the remainder of the finance manager's budget presentation?
Sure, if everyone,
Okay. Sure, I would like to.
yes, I would like to.
Commissioner Clark? Okay.
She did. But you can say yes or no.
Okay, sure.
Commissioner.
I'd like to see it. You work
Yeah, I'd like
hard,
to see
Jolie.
it.
Do what, sir?
I said, I'd like to see it. You work hard doing this.
Oh, yeah, well,
And we so appreciate it. It's not easy doing numbers and crunching them, and gosh knows none of us like to do it at
There's
home
some,
for a company or a city.
this is one of the more difficult ones in recent history that I know of. So here, you were looking at some numbers, and again, because as I've spoken with some of you, some of these line items, we're just talking about account totals here because some of this information is not public yet. And so, the manager has frozen some positions and eliminated some other ones, so I wouldn't want to get to the granular detail of positions and things like that. The employees already are, kind of paying attention. I've seen more employees in this budget workshop today than in many several past years. So there were some things like there were expenses for buildings that, the manager was like, no, we're not going to do that. Machinery and equipment, I know that the direction at the last meeting, I know there was a comment about, not cutting capital projects or infrastructure things. These were some toys that didn't need to be done. However, we did fund some projects that needed to be funded and put into the budget. There was a principal error rounding. So to my point a second ago, Commissioner, about I'm down on the runway while you're looking for the 5,000-foot view. There was a $3,132 rounding error on one of the debt service payments that had to be fixed. Repairs and maintenance, we've deferred some of that, and those are $475,000, $127,000 in other kinds of contractual services, $63,000 in licenses and other kinds of stuff, some software issues that people wanted, $9,000 worth of copiers and some other things that cut, books and memberships. There were some outdated ones there, still even like some memberships at the county level that we don't need at the municipal level. Printing and binding, we're moving into a paperless environment and trying to do as little on paper as possible. Traveling per diem, the manager feels like training is important, and so looking at traveling per diem seems like a hot button issue, but it's actually directly tied to training and education, and some employees have certifications that they need to maintain and always stay abreast of new stuff. The general liability, I'd already said that there was a 7% reduction. Now, that was in the $3.9 million out of balance. I had already cut the insurance by 7%. Again, to my point, I found a $180 problem that had to be cut. So, yeah, as you said, every dollar counts and adds to that. Communication services, a rounding error. And then some things we did add $86 to someone's office supplies to make a number work, freight and postage. Someone had left it out, like you really need that. Promotional activities, that's more of a reclassification. Operating supplies, professional services, we did that. And then the fleet vehicle lease, there's a $100,000 adjustment there just because someone had their math wrong. But on our previous slide today, we talked about cutting 261 out of it by funding some of those purchases. So this is a net number kind of situation here. $4 million out of intergovernmental transfers. Now, some of those transfers were to outside organizations, some were to just internal fund accounting, and some were funding those reserves that we've already reduced. So there was a big chunk there. And then also things like contingencies. I try to put a contingency in the funds for this. However, we reduce those. We're just going to roll the dice and hope everything works well. $20,000 other uses is simply things like funding depreciation, those kind of really bean counter deep things. And then because of those changes I mentioned in the FRS, the health insurance, the union negotiations, this is the net change to those personal service accounts, FICA, retirement, special pay, life and health, and regular salaries. So even though there's reductions there because of some position freezing and position removal, there still wound up being a net positive change to those numbers, so that was added to the budget. And so, it wasn't just finding the $3.9 million, we actually got worse before we got better to get there. So that's what takes us down to the point we are today with the $2,223,000. Because I have already put that revenue reduction in the budget just so that it wasn't left out at the last minute, and done on just Excel. But I've set it up so that, Commissioner, you said as close as we could get. So yes, if it winds up gliding in and you vote for a 4.9 mils or whatever it is, it's easily enough adjusted in. But again, it would flow through the entire budget and would, right? It's like if the dental plan changes by $1, I have to change all 600 pages of the budget practically. So, that is where we're at. And so we weren't going to get any more into detail since some things are very fluid right now. So I would take further questions or direction or.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes, Jolie, so,
Yes, sir.
so we pretty much know the revenue at this point. It comes down to expenditures. If I'm understanding you correctly, all the departments have, has union negotiations been finalized, or is
No.
that?
Yes,
no?
so union negotiations have
That
been.
union?
Well, unless the unions.
Contracts with the
Okay.
union.
Yeah.
We
have
will not
contracts
be
with-
opening negotiations. We're fine with the contracts, but the unions haven't taken that, they haven't told us whether they're opening or not. I told them to come today to measure the tolerance of the board.
Yeah, and is this something that can be done sooner, so it's not like a,
Well, I told them that I didn't think it'd be a good year to open, because if they open the contracts, I was going to be asking them to subject their contracts to these same reductions. Because when the contracts were entered, we had another $1 million in the budget. So if they open the contract, I'm saying, great, now your department has come to the table too. Your employees are now subject to the reductions. Your staffing is subject to the reductions. Your equipment is subject to the reductions, and we can all share in it. If they don't open the negotiations, they can live by their contract, and I have to oblige it because I'm obligated to.
and they can do that at any time between now
but
and,
this month is when it would be. It'd have to be like next week or the week after, we'll know.
and then what are we waiting for from departments, Jolie, for nothing?
Nothing, so,
They've submitted everything to me,
Okay.
and then Jolie and I sit down and tell them
Going
no.
through the wants and the needs, as Jolie
Well,
states.
yeah, it's a fun game. The department head leaves and we're like, thank you for your time, have a great day. And then they leave the room, we're like, well, that's getting cut.
Bye-bye.
But no, every department head, including public safety, did offer up some things that they said, okay, these are wants, not needs. And they did tell us what were needs. And this budget currently does its best to keep the needs. And we did take the ones that they offered up freely. And then the manager went a little, once he got a taste, he went a little deeper. So, and then that 4B is some of those other ones that we're holding in our pocket that we're, looking to see which is going to be the most doable. And as far as revenues, Commissioner, so back to that revenue sheet, we could still get some revenues because the state of Florida hasn't released all the revenues yet. So, communication service tax has been trending down, but still way slower than what the, Tallahassee preached gloom and doom about 10 years ago, and they said it was going to be gone by now. It keeps dropping like, 1%. So it's not a major thing. But as we've added more people, more payers, the revenue has stayed steadier than even dropping the 1%. So you understand what I'm saying?
No, I understand, and I guess
Okay.
for future budget workshops, because there's still a couple over the next couple of years I'm going to be a part of.
Yes,
Is
sir.
there any way that I can get the wants and the needs list just
You
for
have.
so I have this, but how do I know it's wants and needs exactly? Like this,
Everything is that. That's what it is. They don't write, I want this or I need this.
That's where you and Jolie-
Everything they say is, this is desperate, we absolutely
Gotcha.
have to have this or we're gonna die. If they tell me it's a want, you can put a line through it right then while they're talking.
One time, Commissioner,
is that just how it is, right, I guess?
Oh, yeah. One time when I was a kid,
So I
my dad said I had accumulated a lot of junk.
My back hurts, and I want $1 million right now, but I know I'm not going to get it.
Right, and I think that that's,
And,
when they're approaching it, that's
They hold the item up in front of you, and if you didn't say, keep it, like instantly, it was like, like it went out the window.
Yeah.
So there were items that the department directors were like, I must have that. And then if they were like, well, we're like, okay. And I just put a little highlight on it.
When I met with Jolie, he had lines through stuff. When I said to somebody, are you sure? He thought that meant take it out.
I mean, it makes more sense now. That's why I'm asking all the
So,
questions.
yes.
I'm not targeting anyone.
As I said to Commissioner Giobi, Commissioner Reed, the printout that you have is when it was $3.9 million out of balance. So those notes now, that same report would have, all those notes are different
So
now.
we'll get new
They're all-
PDFs.
Well, the wants and needs are really what you want and need. If you look at those and you say to me, recognize that if we're reducing services across the board, whatever it might be, let's say every single park gets mowed every 5 days. Well, I might move it to every 7 days, because that way we can, through attrition, have less people mowing or have less people doing stuff. And I'm using that as an example. It's not what's going to happen. I want to say that again. But now you'll get calls that, oh, that pond needs to be trimmed or that park needs to be mowed. And yeah, it'll get mowed and it'll happen, but it's just going to happen
Not on a 5-day
less often.
rotation, it's on a 7-day.
Right.
Well, like, just for example, Jolie, this is just thinking outside the box too, and it's like Mike says, sometimes you get into the weeds of some of these numbers, but like, take, for example, background checks. Like, I'm assuming the city pays for background checks for all employees, new hires.
Well, yes.
We did find a duplication in one of the departments. One department had additional background checks in their department there were 3 departments that had background checks.
Okay.
And one was HR, one was police, and one was recreation. And we eliminated the duplication of that expense.
Okay, that's my next
But
one.
There's only about a $1,200
we do
savings.
have
Yeah.
minimal background checks on all employees, but when we had, like, the community services was providing the aftercare program, everybody had to have an extensive background check because nobody could be allowed in
Yeah,
the
level
building.
2.
Yes.
And police have to as well, but
So that got
overall-
cut.
Right.
Right,
And
that extra
also
level of background was
the-
cut.
The drug testing for every employee and things like that as well. And
Mike, do you have any?
Thank you, Jolie.
Thank you, Jolie. You've been so patient with us.
No. So I'll spend the rest of today and this week, and I'll try as quickly as tomorrow to get you a buttoned-up PDF, like, or PowerPoint of the numbers and the reports, and then
public comment on
that'll be
that.
with the city council, right?
Yeah,
Oh, we do?
yes.
I just, before we move on, I just have a few comments, and when you're dealing with a budget over $90 million, the challenge is the uncertainties, and they are enormous for a city. And I'm just going to pick 3 of them, and the first is the ad valorem. And we can expect that to be going down pretty steadily now. As you know, the economies move in cycles. And we peaked at 2008 in ad valorem, and it took us until 2019
2022.
to return to those valuations, and we have had a dramatic spike in home prices. As you know, those tend to roll over, and they'll be going down probably for a while. In fact, the median home sales price in January of 2025 in Stuart was down 36.2%. And that's from the Bank Rate Monitor, who does a pretty good job because they do most of the mortgages. It's also on Redfin. So we can expect that number to be going down. The second biggest number we have, revenue-wise, is interest. And if we're going to pay attention to what Republicans in the state or the federal government are saying, what is Mr. Trump's, one of his biggest priority right now is to fire the Fed chief and to lower interest rates. The only interest rate the Fed controls is called the Fed's funds rate. It's at 4.5%. He wants to cut that to 1. He wants to cut that by 2/3. So let's not be that dramatic. But if interest rates go down just 40%, so 40%, 160, we could lose $1.72 million just in interest, and we can't control that.
That median house price would go up, though.
Well, so, Commissioner, just to say, since that was a question that filtered through the manager to me, the city, we have a comprehensive portfolio where we, the money is diversely invested, okay? And we have money in cash, we have money in a government pool, and then we have money in a portfolio that tiers out to the oldest investment we have, only goes out 5 years. Because I wouldn't want to lock the money up in a lower rate if a better opportunity comes along, right? Unfortunately, though, the majority of our investments are in what we're allowed to invest in by state statute, which is mostly government securities and bonds. We have a little bit of corporate stock, but as I've said in the past 2 meetings, when the stock market does better, the bond market does worse, and so the city's earnings go down. We also, we move money up and move money down on a weekly basis.
Right.
And so if we write a big check for, a water sewer project, the principal that's invested for that period, I just rated that principal that's invested for a period of time until the money gets replenished or we get a reimbursement from SRF. That's one of our infamous ones. So, if you had $1 million in the account, you just wrote a check for $500,000. Well, now you're only investing $500,000 for, 2 weeks or a month until you get that $500,000 back, if you get it back. So our interest is not only a function of the market and the performance, but also where the money is at any time based on inflows and outflows of money.
Sure.
That one. Okay. So you're saying that interest fluctuation, that I have two factors moving on. I could just watch CNBC every day and see where the money's going. I have to also be like, oh, we just paid out $2 million for, if we underground utilities and a big, Pinal Roc's into the big invoice for the underground utilities, well, that money's out the door for however many number of days, and that reduces our available interest earnings on that principal. So this isn't just some hoard of money like a dragon that we sit on for 30 years. It's an active portfolio.
Is it safe to say that if Fed funds rate went down by 2/3, that the effective rate?
I would expect investors to move into the stock market and move out of the bond market.
Jolie, can you tell us how much we're down in interest this year?
I've cut the interest earnings, so again, in the requested budget, I had cut it $800,000, now I've only cut it $350,000. So we're going to possibly do a little better than what I thought, but again, that's a real negotiation for me. But the problem is the fact is we don't have a lot of projects in the 26 budget, so I don't expect to be cutting new flows of money. The current flows of money for CRA projects, water sewer projects, and general fund projects are known to me, and so those cash drawdown schedules are already factored in.
These are complicated calculations.
Yeah, they're very complicated calculations. I do my best to keep up. So.
And then finally, and this is on the expense side, and this is something the Florida League of Cities fought very hard for, and I think it had been 15 years, but the stormwater regs have just been updated. They actually will not go into effect until next year. And this is something that was fought very hard by developers because it's considerably more expensive to deal with these precipitation events that we're having that are so much more dramatic than we're used to. And so we can't anticipate on our side, and this goes to our most primary responsibility as a local government, to protect the health and welfare of our city and make sure we can travel on our roads and that we get rid of this water in a timely manner and that people can go to and use businesses. So what they're saying is these updated stormwater regs are going to require more complex design and maintenance. Municipalities will need to allocate more space for stormwater management features, use higher performing treatment technologies, and undertake regular routine maintenance and eventual component replacements. Read staff there. The shift from traditional methods to treatment-trained strategies, combining several best management practices, will often require higher investments upfront and over the life cycle of the projects. Design and engineering compliance, the performance-based approach requires municipalities to demonstrate through modeling and calculations, that's a cost we will be incurring, that new and existing systems meet nutrient reduction benchmarks, increasing engineering and compliance costs. I don't know what those costs are going to be. I know we're going to have to incur them. And so I hate saying with not knowing, oh, we're just going to reduce the budget and not meet our obligation to keep our city and its citizens safe. So we are going to see our budget. We are going to see revenue decline. And we do not need to compound it. I give Mr. Mortel and the previous commissioners tremendous credit for keeping it at a 5. Over 70% of the municipalities in the state of Florida over the past 5 years have raised their millages, and we have not. And through the hard work of the city manager and our budget director, that we've been able to accommodate the already declining revenues we've seen and meet the challenges of increasing costs. Let's move on to comments by, I'm sorry, Commissioner Clark, did you have a comment?
I said public.
No. We have comments by city commissioners. Do you wish to make any?
No, I don't.
Okay, Commissioner Reed?
Growth doesn't pay for itself.
Okay. Mr. Vice Mayor? Okay. Mr. Motel?
I have no comments.
Okay. I need an approval of the agenda. We have a motion by Commissioner Clark,
Second.
a second by the Vice Mayor. What it says. I don't know what agenda there is.
I think we already did it.
Okay.
That's correct.
We missed it.
I do have one public comment, Mayor.
I'm going in order, what it tells me to do.
Just a president.
Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor?
No, there's one.
The clerk does have a,
On the agenda? No, we're going to go to public comments from the public.
Okay.
Helen McBride.
We're on public comments now.
And I am the public, Helen McBride, on Flamingo. You know, as I told you the last time, I've gone for years at these budget meetings. And I remember way back when the city was really down. We're very proud of our city, the citizens. It's the cleanest, and our recreation, every one of our parks, Flagler, Shepherd, Memorial, the bandstand, and the weekends, you see all the people coming. That's great. That's great for the economy and that. But my main concern is the working class people, the children, and our senior citizens. Now, you want to cut. Well, you may make good money, but there are other people who depend on the activities that happen in our city. Now, I remember I marched in parades. There was no, well, the police department, no bands or that. It was just that we all got together and we, the kids from, I think it was the Stuart Middle School carried the flags and that. But, you know, I think maybe some people are being penny wise and pound foolish. We have done wonders with 5%, and it's been quite a few years. Now, why, you know, I don't understand why somebody or you commissioners, I'll throw you all in the pot, want to bring it down. It's great at 5. We'll get all these services. You know, our garbage, our trash pickup, the leaves and that. You really, I hope and pray that you stop and think of the little people, the seniors. I know I'm over at the 10th Street Rec Center. My goodness, how that has improved from when it used to be called Soul Center back in the day. Activities, every day there's activities going on. The ball field, I'm enjoying it because there's soccer, there's football, there's lacrosse, and the little guys playing their baseball. And there's football, but not too much. But please, think of the little people. I mean, it's fine sitting up there, I'm the commissioner, like I told you the last time. When a couple of commissioners wish there were more people here, I said, if you take away our services and we start deteriorating again, you will see the public here. Thank you.
I have Travis Decker.
Gosh, this is the second time I've been up here in like 2 weeks. Not getting any better at it, though. So anyways, good afternoon, commissioners, city officials, and members of the public. I'm Travis Deckers, the legislative vice president for Stuart Firefighters Local 2411 Union. It's obvious why I'm up here speaking today, and I'm sure the first thought is I'll speak about the doom and gloom of fire rescue in the city and why cutting the millage would be bad for us. While there is a lot that the majority of you don't understand what it is we do with the funding we receive, I'm going to take a moment to talk about not just us, but the overall situation. As we heard, when we cut the millage, it's also going to affect public safety. Well, we're saying we don't want to do that, so we have to take from other funding sources, which is going to take from other services and positions within the city. So when we say that, you know, we're going to do that just to make ends meet with fire rescue, Sure, we're going to keep positions in fire and rescue. That's great. That's awesome. We love that. We don't love that other people are losing their jobs in order to make sure we do that. On top of that, when we have the funding we get for our annual budget, we're not talking about our trucks, the equipment we use. Right now, one of our engines is over 30 years old at Station 2, and its transmission stutters, and the tank that carries the water to fight fire leaks. And that's no fault of our admin chiefs, it's no fault of anything that they're doing. We have trucks that are on the way, but that's to talk about how far behind we are as a department. And I know it's not just us, that is every department in the city. So to say that cutting the millage is going to save us is, I don't know, to me that sounds crazy, because it's not going to save us. It's going to put us further back from where we've gained. Thank you.
Mark Beckville.
Mr. Beckville.
Good evening. Mark Breckbill, 406 Northeast Finney Drive, Stuart, Florida, 34996. So what I wanted to mention, I mean, I think that this budget kind of reflects the diversity of Stuart. We have some very, very wealthy people, and we have some people that aren't wealthy. They fall below the poverty line in many cases. Many of them are older, retired. They don't have that kind of income coming in. They're living off of Social Security. I think that we are going to see a reduction in revenues coming up, and we need to be prepared for it. But what we do now, I think, should be more of a short-term fix without any long-term commitments, and then looking at the longer term, if this does happen, making those long-term cuts. And what I'm getting at is if we make cuts to the millage rate, and I know you guys have all looked at this, it's going to give money back to the wealthiest people in town because they pay the largest taxes. So what we're trying, and in some cases, we've got RETA, which, people are already getting money. On the other side of that, what I think we ought to look at doing is helping subsidize, maybe only 1 year, it's no long-term commitment, but subsidize things like utilities. Our utility bills are high, and that's a big strain on most families. But utilities and fire, and police, that type of thing, we can subsidize those costs. We have that fee for fire now. Maybe we can subsidize that cost for those people and not commit to that long term. We're not saying we're going to do this and we're going to stay here. The problem with reducing that millage is once you get there, you may not be able to get it back up, and then at that point you may need it. The flip side of it is we may go too long and not cut when we need to. So I would just ask that you look at the possibility of keeping the millage rate the same and taking the savings that occur out of that and push it back through the system as a reduction in fees for utilities and other things. And that will mean that there are some people who are not voters in the city of Stuart that will get a benefit, but they have businesses in Stuart and they have and they live in Stuart, and they may be don't own a home, but they're renting. So that's my only comment. I wish just if you could take a look at that.
Thank you.
I have no further public comment, Mayor.
No further public comment?
No further.
Well, seeing no other items for our consideration, this budget meeting is adjourned. We will reconvene at 4:30. Or not reconvene, we will